Hi everyone. I received a lot of emails recently asking to compare the top schools in India and the top schools in the West, okay, especially in United States. And I previously made a video on master's program was MS by research in India versus Mtech program and MS in United States. Okay, so I feel that a lot of students after that wrote back to me asking a follow-up comparing the best schools in India and the best schools in America. If one wants to choose a master's program, what are the trade-offs between these options? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first compare the coursework. That's, see, when you do a master's program, that's one of the most important focus is your coursework. So which means you want to upskill yourself, and coursework is one of the big big assets of a university for that. And then research. If you want to pursue research, we'll compare that as well. Lifestyle, lifestyle is something very, this again is, it changes from person to person. The experiences are different for different people, but I'll give a general idea. And then industry. Why industry? Before industry, I'll talk about faculty, a rough idea about the faculties, India versus United States. And then industry. Why industry? Because we are just talking about universities, but why industry is that because immediately after your universities you'll be landing in industry, so it's important to compare the opportunities you will have after you finish your MS in India versus United States. Okay, so again, disclaimer, these are all my personal opinions, and this is again not an exhaustive list. I'll, to the best of my abilities, I'll give a fair comparison. Okay, so we are going to compare the best schools in United States for master's degree. I'll probably talk about it from a circuit point of view. Okay, so let's say MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, or UC Berkeley or UCLA versus the IITs, Madras, Kanpur, and so on. So first you have to understand MIT, Berkeley, they became world-class universities in 1950s. Immediately after World War, MIT had attained almost a cult status across the world. Everybody wanted to build their own MIT, So IIT Kanpur being one example, they want to draw inspiration from MIT. And even BITS Pilani, they wanted to draw, mainly BITS Pilani used to be a pharmaceutical institute, which they slowly converted to an engineering college. So immediately, this was after our independence, we wanted to train, India wanted to train its own talent, to build the nation. So all the young talents, they had to be trained so that, they can then start companies or work for the Indian companies and be a part of the workforce. So you should know, in 1950s, 60s, if you are exceptionally gifted talent in India, the opportunities were simply non-existent. So some of the best talents did, so back in the day to go to United States was not very easy for everyone. Okay, the accessibility was not very easy. A few of them had some connections, couldn't go, but majority of them, especially who finished their degrees from the new IITs, joined back as faculties in IITs itself. So that's why the quality of teaching, pedagogy was exceptional in IITs and even at BITS, especially in 1970s, 80s. Okay, because those guys who graduated out of these colleges from these top schools didn't have, the brain drain hasn't started yet. H1B came into existence only in 1990s. So before that, the best minds were staying back in the country, and they became, they, whatever in capacity, they, whatever opportunities that were available, they made the best use of it. There were some rare cases where, this, I think I heard it happened more in 1980s, when slowly the brain drain, some exceptionally good talents in IITs who finished their BTech in IITs, they used to go to United States and come back to India. So Professor Junjunwala is one good example. So Professor Bhaskar Ramurthy, who came back later, late 1980s. So some very good talents who returned back to India, and they had a great impact on the generations after that. Okay, so the teaching talent was exceptional, but you should understand the American schools served as an inspiration for a lot of Indian universities. Not just India, even South Korea, the university KAIST was established something similar along the lines of MIT. They wanted to recreate MIT in the East. So that's the legacy of these universities. So they have the advantage of legacy history. They have all, by the time these universities, IITs were formed, MIT was already a world-class university. It became some of the best inventions came out of the university, and some great engineers were teaching at MIT. Okay, Shannon graduated there, and Princeton was also a great university in 1930s and 40s. Okay, so we'll compare the universities, but I'm just giving you this idea about IITs, why it was so great in 1990s and 80s, because the best minds stayed back in the country, and the pedagogy was exceptional. Okay, that's one big advantage Indian schools had. Then came the H1B visas were introduced, and going to United States became much easier. Okay, 90s, and at that time I heard many IIT students, especially the top IITs, almost more than 50% of the class would just go to United States. So the motivation for students to go to United States used to be for two reasons. One is economic, right? Most of our country, majority means many students who got into IITs were from very middle class families. Sometimes students would come from first generation poverty, and that's true even from BITS. Even when I was a student in 2000s to 2000, I would say less than 2015. I noticed this before 2015. You walk into IITs or BITS, it's very normal. Maybe not BITS, but IITs, it's very normal to find people coming from first generation poverty. Many students in these universities. But that is slowly changing now. Okay, now it's very rare phenomenon. But so before that, 1990s and around this time when immigration started, two main reasons. One was economic. The pay scales were much higher in United States. The even more important reason was opportunities. The number of opportunities available for students who graduated out of college was simply much greater, several orders of magnitude greater than India. Just to give you an example, when IIT Kharagpur was opened, when the first batch of students graduated out of college, the students who graduated, this was in 1960s, I think late 1950s and 60s, when they graduated, those students didn't have enough opportunities in the country. So they had to delay some new IITs because they feared that we will end up creating students who will have no opportunities in the country. So that's the problem. Opportunity was a very big issue. Then the other major reason was economy. Now fast forward to 2024. I'm making this video for those students who graduated now in 2020s. These two are not a very big issue. You have opportunities. If you look for opportunities is not a very big deal, and you get pretty decent pay scales as well in India itself. Okay, so these two are not the reasons. Now the reasons for migration, or if there is any sentiment for migration, that stems from standards of living. Now this is a natural progression. As economy becomes better, our country's economy becomes better, the population would look for better living standards. Okay, 15 years ago you were not demanding for very the demands for better roads, better infrastructure existed, but now it's much higher. The middle class is demanding for much better living standards. They are expecting first world living standards now in the country. So this living standard is now a big motivation for a lot of talent to move abroad. Okay, this is a very basic idea I've just given you guys. Keeping this in mind, now we will come back to our topic, which is comparing these universities. Okay, so I'm just giving you an idea why immigration is still happening. It's happening in a good numbers. The reasons are different now. Okay, so every year more and more students are going to United States. You have all the best teaching material available online today on YouTube. Any subject you take, you have some really good courses available on YouTube. You have great courses on Coursera and other teaching platforms. So teaching is not a very big reason now. I mean, the opportunity, and also probably I should include in opportunity the knowledge, right? To gain knowledge, the knowledge itself was not available in India back in 1980s and 1990s. Okay, so I remember when professors used to go to United States. I remember, I think I heard from Professor Bhaskaramurthy of IIT Madras that even though he wanted to do a research in circuit design, he was persuaded by his teachers to do research in signal processing because they wanted him to bring that knowledge to the country. Okay, so knowledge itself was not there. So because this was before internet, so that was, again, these were all big reasons for migration. But now all these things, are not a very big deal. We are living in an age of connectivity, right? Information is easily accessible on the internet. So now the big reason is standard of living. That's what the younger talents are looking for. Less population, less pollution. These are the things they are looking for. Better infrastructure. These are the things that the younger populations are looking for. So having said this, now I'll start comparing the universities in terms of these metrics. Okay, this is mainly for top schools versus top schools. That's the request I received some time back. So first, coursework. When we one of the major reasons, right, students who go for masters is they want to be immediately employable after their masters. So coursework forms a very important criterion for choosing the right school, and top American schools are well known for their great coursework, well-designed courses. So one big advantage American schools have is diversity in faculty. So they try to absorb the best faculty from across the world. Okay, so in India we have great faculties, but the diversity is far less. Okay, so for example, in some fields, I would say that in some fields, in specific fields, some IITs have great faculties. For example, IIT Madras in circuit design has a very good diversity of faculty, especially in the fields of low frequency circuit design, mixed signal circuit design. Okay, so IITM has great faculties, probably comparable to the best schools in United States. But there is, of course, American schools come with diversity of faculty from a wide range of topics. You will have some of the best guys doing, especially the top schools. I'm talking here only about the top schools. You'll have some guys doing phenomenal research in devices and equally good research in circuits, equally good research in systems. Okay, whereas that may not be true in IITs. You may have some IITs, you may have exceptional faculty in one domain, may not be so much in other domains. Okay, so the diversity in faculty, this helps because America gets to pick from the best faculty from wide ethnicities, right? So you can come from anywhere in the world and you'll have that diversity in faculty. The coursework this is true especially for in IITs, for example, IIT Madras and some even other IITs, computer science courseworks are pretty decent. Okay, but when it comes to practical engineering courses, the courses in most American schools are more practice oriented. Okay, and this also comes from the fact that many of these universities have better funding compared to Indian schools. Okay, so keep in mind the Indian students who go to United States add a lot, especially international, not just India. The international students add a huge amount financially. They add a lot of value to those universities. That is one big reason why universities want students to come, right? So in India itself draws around 200,000 students, which is 2 lakh students. China draws around that number, and China supplies similar amount of students to American colleges. So students do 2 things. One, they pay fees and they work much harder in the universities, and they also serve as teaching assistants, right? So you get good quality teaching assistants. You get you pay money for the university, so which translates to better infrastructure. The universities will be able to provide you better. For example, let's say you're doing an advanced RF course, you will be given very good, very high-end RF evaluation boards. That may not be feasible in even the best IITs. Okay, so the courses are a bit more theoretical in Indian universities. I can say this more about circuits, but generally it's more practice oriented in the Western schools. Okay, then variety of courses. As I said, because there is more variety, more diversity in faculty, naturally you can expect diversity in courses. You would have a wide variety of courses, very good quality courses, which will be available. And in India, for example, specific IITs, the number of courses may be less, but in some cases, in special cases, like for example, if you are comparing IIT Madras circuit design, you have at least 4 or 5 guys with some different set of expertise, right? So that they will be able to offer you a wide, probably a very good quality teaching for master's level compared to even a comparable top American school. But let's say you're an undergraduate who already graduated from one of the top IITs. Then naturally, yes, you would want more variety. You can go to United States, But remember, say this is something I hear from my students as well. Grass is always greener on the other side. Okay, so sometimes in some cases my students told me this is that they expected a lot more, but they felt it was comparable, and sometimes it was even a downgrade. They enjoyed projects here, but they realized, because you remember, not all faculties will have time for teaching in American schools, because funding for their projects is very challenging in American schools. So a lot of time, faculty's time goes in finding the funding and all that. Okay, so some faculties whose tenures is already done, who already gotten their tenures and still are interested in teaching, do the teaching job very well. But generally, the effort of teaching is not as high as you would see in some Indian schools. Okay, in Indian schools, some teachers would really be passionate about teaching. So that effort you may not see in top American schools. Okay, there are some exceptions. I heard some of the faculties in Stanford, or some specific faculties in UCLA, they put a lot of effort into teaching. But I would say that there are schools, top schools in India, where the faculties would put a lot more effort into teaching. Okay, but if you are to compare the variety of coursework, there may be some areas of coursework you may not find in India. You will easily find it in United States. Remember, guys, this is a function of the school as well. So I have had some of my students say that even in the top schools, they couldn't get the variety of coursework in circuit design that they could find in IITM. Okay, so that variety was not available. So they could easily find a course on ADCs, PLLs, wireline design from an IITM professors offering them. But even in the top American schools, that variety was not available. Okay, so it's subjective from school to school. But if I were to compare IITM versus a top school, I would rank it equal in terms of the pedagogy and teaching, right? I would rank it as good as any American school, just for master's coursework point of view, from a coursework point of view. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Okay, it may be, in fact, IITM may be better than many of the top schools in circuit design. It may be better than many of the top schools in US. Okay, from pedagogy and the variety of coursework point of view. So this is for coursework. And if you are already from an IIT, yes, there is, of course, you might have let's say you are from IITM, you might have already taken these courses in your 4th year. Then of course it makes sense to go look for a different experience in the American schools. Okay, in fact, you may not find any advantage in terms of coursework. You may be looking for other things. Okay, you may be looking for better work opportunities. We'll talk about them in the over the course of this lecture. Okay, so just something to bear in mind. So finally, to summarize, coursework on an average, if you just compare overall, there is more diversity in coursework in the Western schools, okay, in American schools. And that's because there is more diversity in faculty with a wide variety of talents. And American schools, especially higher faculties, keeping the future in mind, what is the new technology. So they could get, for example, American schools can get talents in very high-end signal processing, faculties who are good at signal processing and circuit design. They could get faculties who are working in terahertz signal processing. But in India, we don't have that variety. Okay, so some top American schools have it. So let's say you are interested in some specific field. You feel, okay, I want to explore terahertz signal processing. Then you may not find it in India. Yes, there US clearly has an advantage. Go figure out the right school which has it. Let's say Columbia may have very good RF and microwave courses. Maybe yes, that's a good option. And then look for university. There may be some specific professors who will be offering courses in the areas you are interested in. Okay. Other field which I notice is that again, see, there is a global shortage of good quality faculty in circuit design. But I'm talking about, given the opportunities, given the choices you have, how do you pick? Look for, if your specific interest happens to be, let's say you're already graduating from a top Indian school, and you realize that you don't find certain courses. Let's say a course which is heavily into signal processing and circuit design, it's not there in any best schools in India. Then you may find that in some American school, okay, or a professor who's doing at least research in that field. So you can apply for that and then maybe do an internship with a prof during your masters. So that option, still America has a leading edge because of they get a much more diversity in faculty, okay, and naturally that leads to varieties of coursework. So that's about coursework. So next is lifestyle differences. So this usually is not, see, when I was graduating out of college and my seniors were graduating, we didn't really care about lifestyle differences. We said whatever be the lifestyle, we are going to endure that, because as I said, the opportunities were simply not there back home. Right now you guys have, TI, many other companies hiring in such large numbers. That never used to happen when I was graduating. They used to come to colleges and hire, but the number used to be much, much smaller. Okay, so for us to go to United States, students would live very frugal lifestyles, and they were ready to trade off poor quality lifestyles because they were getting better opportunities and also for financial reasons, right? Immediately you get a job with much higher pay scales. So it's a risk worth taking, you take it. So in USA, if you are a student who's going to United States, time management is extremely important for master's program because you have to manage everything yourself, right from laundry to food. Everything has to be managed from your side. Okay, and then in India, IITs usually are they are like small islands, right? Most IITs, the top schools, are like small islands. Everything is met inside, and once you have a bicycle, you're pretty much done, right? Food is served in the mess. Laundry, you have people for that, and you don't have to put much effort there. So laundry, food, all those things are more or less taken care of. Your focus is only on education. Okay, so that might eat away, time management might eat away some time onto your coursework, because see, master's program is just 2 years. It's not a very long program. Sometimes it's even less than that. Some students graduate early. Okay, it's 2 years. So it will be like a roller coaster. You just sit on it, and then it just goes so fast that you'll feel that you just entered and you're exiting. Okay, PhD, you get more time to learn, but masters is a very, very short duration, and you have to make the best use of it. To do that, time management is extremely important. Okay, if you waste, let's say you chill out in the first year, your time is already gone, right? Because it's a fixed duration program, you have to finish it fast, come out of it. Money, because you want to get the right internships. So my students tell me, especially when they go for first year, getting internships is a bit of a challenge. Okay, they get easier internships easily in their second year, but first year, they say internships is a bit of a challenge. Second thing, the other thing that's more important is something that students don't think about it, is as soon as you join the institute, all these IITs for the American schools for master's program, within 3 to 4 months, you have to start applying for internships. So keep in mind, especially when first time you're going to United States, there is a culture shock. And it's a new world, you will be getting adjusted to it. It will take you 1 or 2 months for that. Once you get adjusted to that, immediately you have to start sitting for internships. You have to start applying for internships. In India, it's much, much easier, right? So you have a placement division which takes care of all of that. You just have to go, give some written tests, appear some interviews, and this happens only in your, after 1.5 years. Sometimes some IITs after 1.5 years, and some IITs after 1 year. In BITS, it is after 1 year. So you get 2 semesters and 1 summer term to prepare for that. So whereas in American schools, that's not there. You have to take care of your own placements. So there is more stress on you. So this is something you have to keep in mind. So it's not all fun. So immediately as soon as you get into masters, it's a very challenge. Students find it very difficult because time management is not so great for a lot of people. Okay, so you have to keep in mind that you have to the honeymoon period, right? The wherein you go to this American school, first world, all the benefit. You see some great, the culture is very different. So university is also much bigger. So it takes some time for you to absorb all of that, and immediately you have to apply for internships. Okay, and also remember, first year is when you will be able to maximally learn from coursework as well, because after that you will get used to that. And I have seen a lot of students by the time they come to the end of second year, they just want to be done with it. Okay, so first year is when you learn maximally. So time management is extremely important in your first year. So be prepared. You have to also sit for internships. So here I usually advise my students to work for at least 1 or 2 years before you apply for masters, because this gives you an advantage when you are applying for internships, because you already know what to apply for, and you also will stand out when you are applying for internships. You already have work experience, so you will stand out. Okay, so but sometimes I have seen in cases, so you have to be motivated to go for masters, because if students usually fall into this comfort zone, sometimes immediately after BTech you join a great team, you enjoy your work, and they think, okay, we'll go later. 5 years down the line, they realize, okay, I don't need masters, I'm very happy. They get great promotions. Some of them end up staying in India itself. Okay, and I have seen them going at a much later stage, when they become staff engineers and all that. But this is something I'm just putting it out there, so you keep in mind. Time management is very important if you're going. It's much less stressful in Indian universities. Okay, because most of your work is well managed. The institutes are built in a way that these things are taken care of for you. And so here, and even placements, right? Internships and placements, it's much easier for master students. So in most master students, we don't have internships in India, in which we have something called practice school, where master students spend 6 months, the final semester on in industry. But most IITs don't have. They do projects on campus for their masters, and then they go for their jobs after that. Okay, so most IITs, if I understand right, I think at the end of their first year, so roughly you spend 2 semesters and 1 summer term, and then sit for your campus placements. Now that's about time management and campus placements and all of that. Okay, so be prepared. You have to immediately, as soon as your culture shock, you just get used to the new world, you will have to be applying for internships. So this is where a lot of students miss out. So if you are well prepared, you may end up getting the good opportunities. And also this is something I've noticed. Sometimes some of my students wanted good design work and they couldn't find the right work. Okay, so if you have to get an internship, you are in a pressure, right, to get an internship. So they sometimes end up taking jobs which they don't fully like. Okay, so but usually this doesn't happen with top school students who are really motivated. It doesn't happen, but that's something to keep in mind. Next thing, for lifestyle, better peer culture. Okay, see, American schools have a very diverse talent pool, right? You get the best students from China, from Southeast Asia, from the Middle East, from Europe, Southern Europe, and America, and Southern America, and all that. Okay, so the best students come there from different parts of the world, especially if you are in MIT or Berkeley or Stanford or UCLA. The top school students from all over the world come there. So you'll have better peer culture when especially it reflects. See, Indian students are generally, because a lot of time goes into preparing for entrance exams. So a lot of Indian students are well attuned to this, coursework grading. They are more obsessed with marks. Whereas at some stage you have to lose that. As an undergrad you may be worried about CGPA and all that, but eventually you'll have to come to a mind where what matters more is your contributions to a field. Whether you build a product, work for a company, release it in the market, or work in a research lab and produce highly original ideas, these things matter a lot more. And you will learn that, and you will see that people coming from other cultures will value that over grades. Okay, so these things are learning experiences. Whereas if you're doing Mtech in India, you will again find the same pool of talents who wrote GATE exam entering the universities for masters. Okay, so again the same competition you'll have, so that you will not be fully challenged, especially for masters. See, undergraduate is a very different talent, because I've noticed IIT students, undergraduates, or especially IITs, when I'm teaching at BITS as well, some students are really sharp. So at least you will have 5% of the students are really sharp and very competitive. Undergraduates is a different story. But for master students, when you go to masters, I would say the peer culture is better in American schools. Okay, you will get to see guys who are very good at implementing stuff, very good engineers who come from different schools, because they come from different different learning experiences. So you will get that peer culture in American schools. Okay, that's one thing. The third thing, I've already discussed internship challenges and jobs, so I'll leave that. The other thing, which is campus safety, which again, is not a problem is not a deal breaker for many, but for me, it was one of the concerns. When I was thinking, I heard stories about my friends who are at UCLA, or, and now my students, or even at schools like Yale, or many other universities, or Southern California. It's not safe to go out of campus or roam around the universities after 8 p.m., or late at the nights. So whereas that IITs are some of the safest campuses, right? Especially all the top IITs, they are gated communities, and they're some of the safest places. You can just walk around the campus even at late at nights. So safety is a huge advantage in Indian universities. That's not always the case, so be prepared for it. If let's say you are used to working in the lab till 1 a.m., 2 a.m., at IITs or even at BITS or NITs, you cannot do the same in American schools. Okay, so that will not be very easy. Okay, so this is not a deal breaker for many, but it is some concern for some students. Okay, but just keep in mind, it's not as safe as this. Now there is more homeless problem in some top schools as well. So safety is just a very minor concern, but I'm just putting it out there. So that's about lifestyle differences. Next thing is research. So research matters, especially if you want to gain specialization in some field. Okay, let's say you are already a guy who has done, because you're graduating from a top Indian school. So naturally you would have done some decent work in your undergraduate, or let's say you felt you didn't spend that much time, you want to focus more on specialized topics. Research is one good option. One, you can look for research internships. Usually for master students this is difficult. Getting a good research internship is difficult. For PhD students it's possible. In their second year of PhD, a lot of good PhD students, some of mine, or during my batch as well, some of my friends ended up in very good internship positions for research. Okay, research, again, you can do it in university. Usually you can join a professor's lab. They may be doing a problem, you might contribute in some way, and you get to interact with those PhD students and learn a lot. Okay, so research, joining the research lab and doing good work, so that you gain expertise in some specific topic. Okay, that you should make the best use of it. So in America you have this concept of RA-ship. So you become a teaching assistant for a course where you get involved in the evaluation, assignments, and all those. You'll have to do that for the coursework where you get paid for it. The other thing is RA-ships. Professors may have some projects for which they have some funding, and they may pay you a small amount if you are working on those projects. So that might also help you in your tuition. Okay, so some students who are very, very motivated students from top schools end up with RA positions. Now here, this is where the difference comes between American and Indian schools, is that the diversity of faculty, again, as I said, since there is more diversity in faculty in the West, we have American schools have better options for RAships. In India, some specific topics you have to find the right faculty doing the work, so the options is far lesser compared to the top American schools. So RAships is a very big concept in American schools, not so big of a concept in Indian schools yet. Okay. Second thing, better work ethic. So this is again, this is changing significantly in India now with the younger generations of faculties. So when I'm working with my students, I'm strict in the sense that I expect good work out of my students, but most of my students are not afraid of challenging me. They would just say anything. If they find something is wrong, they would openly criticize it. Okay, so that openness is very important for faculties. Be a friend to faculties, especially for my generation and younger generation who wants to become teachers. Be a good friend to students, especially the students who are very close to you, who are doing very good research work. Be a good friend to them. So they don't. A lot of my students probably won't even address me as sir after a point. So being that better work ethic comes from faculty interactions. So this is something, research wise, this especially India, that's it's especially, it's ongoing, it needs improvement, but it's getting definitely better. The younger generations of faculties are much more open minded, so we are getting there. It's pretty decent. So again, diversity in researchers, the topics available, and also you will find a lot more guys who are doing PhDs. Number of good quality PhD students is much higher in top American schools. Very good quality PhD students is much higher. In India, the number of good quality PhD students is far less compared to America. So that gives you an advantage. If you are doing an RAship, sometimes you may not get time to interact with a prof. So most of your interaction might be with PhD students. So you will have an advantage in that space when you compare with American schools, because the number of good quality PhD students is much higher. Because remember, I'm repeating again, American schools draw the best talents from across the world. So you would get a very good PhD student from China, some good PhD student from the Middle East, some good PhD student from India, from Southeast Asia. So that diversity in researchers will be great for students, especially if you are focused on doing a very good quality RAship. Okay, so this is for students who are going from top school. So I'm assuming you're already interested in doing good quality RAship. So that's there. The third thing is research to product, especially this happens in Stanford. So you will see that there is a precedence of culture, wherein good researchers, if they crack a solid problem, immediately they'll try to convert that into a startup. A good idea, they want to venture into a startup, try to convert it into a product. This happens mainly at Stanford because there is culture, precedence. They have seen their seniors doing it, so they also try to do it. This is almost non-existent in India. Okay, because first, the number of high quality PhDs is very less. And even among those high quality PhDs, I have noticed this, if let's say you do some great work, publish in ISSE from India, then most of those guys end up going to United States. Now, if you're a high quality PhD student in the top schools, you don't have anywhere else to go. So naturally, you do the next best thing that you can. You try to start a company or do something bigger. So that is something you get to see if you're in the right school. So Stanford is one good example where a lot of students, especially PhD students, they want to venture into startups. Okay, so that definitely the culture difference, this plays a big role. Research to product, research to commercialization is definitely a big thing in United States. India, we are trying it now. We are at a very nascent stage. Okay, and we have big systemic problems. One, there is a shortage of good quality researchers that we are facing. We don't have, and even if the ones, very rarely if we end up, some good PhD in research students who do good quality work, they are ending up moving to the West. Okay, so that's the shortage we have. So usually what happens is that good researchers breed good researchers, right? They inspire the younger generations, they produce good work, then they inspire the next generation. So that cycle is broken when when the ease of going to the top schools in the West, or when opportunities in the West draws the talents out. Okay, so we end up having a break in those cycles. So sometimes what happens is in IITs, I see this, some labs, so let's say in IIT Madras, sometimes you'll have very good quality PhD students, and let's say 4 or 5 years it will be like a not so great quality PhD students. Suddenly you get good quality. So it goes like that. But the bigger problem in Indian universities is there is no culture of RA-ship. Okay, students do MTP, their master's project, in their second year, second sem, but by the time majority of them are already placed, and the number of students, usually it becomes just 1 or 2% of students who actually end up doing serious work. Majority of them just want to do some project and come out of college. Okay, so that difference you will notice in US, a lot of them want to do serious work. So that's why I said you will have better, I've already discussed in lifestyle changes, lifestyle differences, better peer culture. You'll have guys who want to do good quality work, that there is a big shortage. And I also notice when I'm interviewing candidates, because this small 1% of students, I also notice an attitude difference, because they haven't seen a bigger world. When you see a bigger world, you will be more humble, because you have seen exceptionally brilliant guys, and you are also worked very hard to create new ideas. So when you haven't seen a bigger world, arrogance is often, stems from ignorance, because you haven't seen a bigger world. So that I sometimes tend to notice this, because they do some decent work, the 1% of talent, but because they haven't seen a bigger picture, they haven't seen a wider pool of talents, they tend to be, I wish the attitudes were different. But again, this is a very small sample. Majority are okay. More than 50% are okay for me. Okay, so masters, RA-ship is almost non-existent in India, and very small fraction of the master students do RA-ship. Okay, and also you have to keep in mind, a lot of students who come to United States to do masters come with some serious dreams. Some wants to do, especially to the top schools, some want to start companies, some want to do great research. So that attitude makes a big difference. Whereas in GATE, when students who graduate from get into the top schools, the focus is just get placed, just get into a top, get some job, because they were not, majority of them were not employable in their undergrad. So master's education is a key for that. Is a path for getting placed. So that's why a lot of them, once they get placed, don't end up putting significant effort in their final year projects. So, and it shows, right? So when everyone's doing very high quality work, naturally you will also be motivated to do good quality work. So that pressure is not there, which is why high quality RA work doesn't come from master's programs in India. Whereas it can come from United States. But remember in mind, guys, keep in mind, the time you have, time management is exceedingly difficult. So if you're in India and you're very motivated and you're lucky to find the right researcher, you can do exceptional quality work, because you have a lot of time on your hands. The lot of things are taken care of here, food, laundry, all those things are taken care of. So you can do phenomenal work if you are that small percentage who got lucky with good quality faculty, you're interacting with good PhD students, and you're also very motivated. Being motivated is also very important in this duration. So you're also motivated. So at that time you can benefit, but that's a very small percentage. Probably I can just count in my fingers the number of students who do that kind of work. Okay, so masters here, USA wins. RA-ship significant. Lifestyle differences, I would still say India is slightly better, but when it comes to research, RA-ships, USA is like leagues ahead. That culture is not fully there in Indian schools yet. So third and the final thing, for research, you also need good quality faculties. So look at the faculty profiles. So this is a general curve. This is something you can notice for most of the faculties. So most of their 20s go in building their career. They do PhDs. Sometimes they work after doing their PhD. After that, 30s is when they start becoming good researchers. They start publishing original ideas. They start teaching. So their impact increases. It increases very steeply in their 30s. 40 to 50, it more or less saturates. Okay. And after that, they take a bigger response. Some faculty end up doing very well even after 50s, in their 50s, but some faculties, they take up bigger responsibilities. They may be managing a very big lab, and or they may be moving on to administrative positions, so their time for research comes down. Okay, so this is just a general curve. I'll say that productivity or research outcomes for a faculty. So look for universities where you have professors who have just gotten tenure and also very energetic. So I've heard UCLA Professor Razavi, even in his 60s, I'm assuming he's in his 60s, is doing very sincere work. Even at 60s, he works very hard. But that's a very rare case. Look for this. If you're interested in research, professors who are late 30s, early 40s is a very good combination. And of course, if they have done great work before, chances are that they'll do good work afterwards. Okay, so look for that if you are looking for good quality faculties. And as I said, if I want to talk about circuits directly, there are some specific fields where there is I would say even in America, I haven't really found great faculty who does exceptional work in signal processing plus circuit design. Okay, there are some teams who do exceptional work in terahertz circuit design. See, these are all fields where the talent pool itself is very small across the world. Okay, so in India, we have a history of low frequency circuit design. We have exceptional talent. Some of the world class engineers live in India. Even to some extent mixed signal design. Some exceptional engineers who build world class products live in India and work in India. But when it comes to terahertz design, and design which involves great amount of signal processing and combination of signal processing and circuit design, America still has a big advantage. In fact, I'm seeing that especially signal processing is moving eastward. There are some good faculties in KAIST, in Tokyo, Japan, and maybe even in China. I haven't fully gone through all the universities, but this is moving eastward. That's just my observation. Signal processing and circuit design is slowly moving eastward. Terahertz, American school. There are some American schools with great programs. So if you guys are interested, search for that. Search for the faculty. See this is just a rough curve. Who was interested? If you are interested in RA-ships, getting an RA-ship, this is what your focus should be on. Look on areas where there is faculties and then apply for those schools. Okay, so a top school may not have, for example, if may not have a faculty working in terahertz. It doesn't mean every top school will have that. Some top schools may not have those faculties. Then it may not be very useful for you. Okay, so yeah, that's for research point of view. And finally, industry. I've briefly mentioned about industry in my previous video on MS versus Mtech versus MS in US. But I'll just finally list out those points. Industry, as I said, you have to figure out interviews and everything. That usually I hear that my students, it's a very stressful time because they have to apply for internships and find it out. So even now, and I already gave you guys the reason. Students, a lot of them who apply for master's education, the reasons for migration is now better living standards. Economy and opportunities are not a big deal anymore. You do find reasonably, if you are really good, especially if you are from a top school in India, opportunities and money is not a big deal. Right? You can find the right opportunities and right money in India itself. Living standards, of course, the first world living standards and all that is definitely better. In the American, in US especially. Okay, so if you are comparing purely living standards, for example, if you are comparing air quality, pollution, and traffic and all that, yes, America wins there. But a lot of students who are working in India, they could easily afford, you get grocery deliveries. These are all very simple. I mean, these things will matter to you. Let's say you are involved in a project with a very sharp deadline and you're working day and night. This is very feasible in your 20s. I mean, you may come to a point where you'll have a work-life balance in your 30s. But since you're going for the first time to the West and you'll have very little time, So you have to invest your energy in the right place. So these things might make small differences. Okay, but overall, especially when you reach your 30s, these things will matter a lot. Once your finances, you have understood, you have more or less reached a decent work ethic, you time management, you have mastered it, then most important things, it will boil down to living standards and all the other factors. Okay, most of the first world universities, or most of the first world countries have better living standards, okay, compared to India. The hope is that it's going to get better, but yeah, nowhere closer as of now. Living standards is being a big motivation for a lot of migration now. So now industry. So when you're applying for jobs, if you are already from a top school, you are looking for a high quality, very high end job. Usually the opportunities become better if you do a PhD. Okay, a lot of universities, for example, there are some teams in US who do very high end work, but they prefer to hire PhDs. But if you want to get into those places just after masters, then you need to do very good quality research work. Okay, maybe you can spend your summer in the final quarter inside the university get a publication. It's feasible, but it's tough because you have to manage your time very well, and your master's program is just 2 years. Within this time you'll have to do it. So of course a lot of American schools give you a lot of freedom, so you have to plan it accordingly if you want to get a targeted job. Or as I said, if you already work for 1 or 2 years in India, 2 years, let's say, you get an advantage, right? You can apply in that specific field where you already gain a lot of knowledge. And if you're already you like the field you're working on, let's say you're working on power electronics, you really liked it, and you find a faculty also working in power electronics, then you spend some time doing some research in the field, then you get hired into the teams. Let's say different companies build power electronics. You may even a lot of digital companies have power electronics requirements. So you get into those teams doing very high end work, where they are trying to maximize maximize efficiency as much as they can. So you can directly get into those jobs if you plan your career really well. You worked in that field, you do your RA-ship in that field, then you have higher chances of getting more research oriented jobs. Okay, so that definitely America has an advantage. In India there are not many teams doing very high end research. Okay, that boils down again to the simple fact that we don't have enough diversity in good teams. A lot of American teams, especially if you want to get into a good American team, look for diversity. If the teams have engineers from, say, China, India, Southeast Asia, Middle East, America. So if you engineers from all these places, usually it's a good sign that they are hiring for talent. So good diversity generally translates to good work ethic and good research as well. Okay, so look for diversity in teams. That's a good point. Then you'll know that the teams are doing good work. In India, we have great teams, but the number is very few. You can just count in your hands, in your fingers, how many such good teams are there. Okay, but these teams do very high quality work, and they do hire master students with great research backgrounds. Okay, there is Aura Semiconductors, there is also Max Linear. If you did phenomenal work, there is a chance that they can hire. And there are a lot of new companies which are establishing their R&D centers in India. So they are also on the lookout for really great talents. Okay, and one problem that we are facing right now in India, this is in fact a global problem, is a global shortage of staff and principal engineers. Okay, these are the stages. When you reach a principal engineer stage, you should be able to do independent research, you should be able to tackle challenging problems and be able to guide and innovate. Okay, so that skill set is becoming smaller. The number of people, the talent pool, there isn't enough talent pool. Whatever that, if let's say you do a great PhD in American school, most of them end up in America. Okay, so that talent pool, definitely there is a shortage, but even in that, fewer talents are many of them are in United States. In India, we have some great engineers and teams, let's say 3 to 4 teams. There will be at least 1 or 2 principal engineers of that caliber, some of the world's best engineers, maybe in some one or two teams, or 2 to 3 teams in India. So that definitely shortage is there. And so when it comes to industry, uh, pay scale is not a big advantage difference. You get better quality pay. The quality of work, you may get a similar quality of work, but you will have this difference in quality of engineers. Very high quality engineers in large numbers, you will find it. Let's say even in US, right, it's not very easy to find good quality engineers in all the teams. Okay, but you will find good quality engineers in few teams, but that number is much higher in United States as of now compared to India. Okay, we have good teams with great engineers, principal engineers, but that number is very small. There are only 3 to 4 or 5 teams that I can think of. Okay, so if you get into those teams after masters directly, you did some great work with a prof, you are very motivated in India, you can actually do high quality work in India now itself. But it takes a lot of drive from yourself, because you may not have peer culture, you may not have somebody who's working like you. Okay, so that's the only challenge you'll have to face. And second thing, you'll also have to find the right faculty. So that's the challenge we have for this. Because if you meet all that in university, then you can get a good industry offer. The chances of that getting a good research oriented industry offer is higher in United States after an MS degree, after a master's, just 2 year master's program, but provided you plan really, really well. Now the challenges here that exist for students is because most students go on a visa, they have that fear of after 2 years. I mean, there usually a lot of students suffer from visa problems. That is now, a concern that was not a concern 10 years ago, but now that's becoming a serious concern. Okay, because a lot of immigration laws are now being, relooked at. So that may have some impact. So keep that in mind. But overall, if you industry, the opportunities, number of industries doing good quality work is much higher. So definitely American schools score there compared to Indian schools. As I said, if you're, let's say, you fall everywhere in the right place, you work with the right faculty, you work on the right problem, then you may have that very small percentage where you're really truly in the cream, you may benefit in Indian school, maybe better than even an American school. It has happened to some students I have seen. It has happened. At least 2 3 of us, when we finished masters, we were lucky to work on a great problem, then end up working in a great team in India as well. So there are such teams. You can find out right teams where you can do good quality work in masters, then you get the freedom of choosing the right place to work for. Okay, but that's like a very small number. In US, the chances are little higher, okay, compared to this. One final thing, this is again, not a big concern for majority of you, but just to keep in mind, students tend to feel a bit of loneliness when they go to American schools. Okay, so this is something which is why I say that you need to have in good mental health, good physical health, and you have a lot of energy, then great, you are in a very good position to get into an American school. Otherwise, work and fix them. Okay, fix your health issues. If you have anything, fix all of that before you go for MS in US, because that can stress you out, because you have to take care of your everything, right? From you have to take care of your own self, and also take courses, and also prepare for all these placements, getting the job, visa issues. So these things can take a toll on you. So ensure that your health is also great, which is why usually they say the younger you are, the better it is, because you will be able to put your body through greater stress at a younger age. So when you're in your late 20s, it becomes challenging. Okay, so that's why if you, in your mind, if you think that, okay, if you want to go for a master's, go as early as possible. Okay, otherwise, if you feel that, okay, I'm very happy in my job, I'm doing great, and you see a great career trajectory for yourself in the company you're working for, then yes, I mean, there have been some great engineers who just had undergraduate degrees who went on to become fellows as well. Fellow is, one of the best, highest technical, titles that one can earn in an industry. So that's something for you guys to think about. Okay, I've more or less talked about everything. I'm not sure if I missed any specific topics. In case I did miss or you have some more doubts, you can just type in the comments, and whenever I see the comments, I'll probably make another video talking about all of that. Okay, thank you.